So when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, there are a bunch of things that we can go over in a video commentary. We can talk about Kiefer Sherwood and the comments that he had made towards Jason Dickinson and how the Canucks are going to have to get back at Dickinson next year. We can talk about the updated standings in the playoff race. We can talk about the Calgary Flames playing off against the Toronto Maple Leafs later today and how much this will impact Vancouver's odds. Or we can head over to Donnie and Dolly, because earlier this morning they had Elliotte Friedman on as a guest, which will be linked in the description alongside of our ExpressVPN affiliate page. This show is brought to you by Express. Go out there, check out that first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support this YouTube channel in the process. But Elliotte Friedman's hit on Donnie and Dolly will be there too. This, of course, encapsulates a whole bunch of different ideas, from the Vancouver Canucks to the Canucks for Kids Fund, but I wanted to go out there and dive into some of these comments made by Friedman, because they do kind of shed some light onto what's going on with the Vancouver Canucks right now. This will be all thanks to Canucks News Summaries on Twitter, who went out there and summarized a lot of what Friedman ended up saying on today's Donnie and Dolly broadcast. You could go out there, give him some support as well. Canucks News Summaries, that is. Opening things up, Friedman spoke about the Four Nations tournament, what worked and what had to be better. And I think this opinion is definitely not unique to just Friedman, but medical access to players needs to be improved. Yeah, absolutely. All the guys getting hurt, from the Tkachuks to McAvoy, all of these names going out there and getting big-time deployment, only to get hurt in a tournament that was literally only 4 or 5 games long. It's certainly a detrimental part of the tournament. Obviously, you would hope that everybody is able to stay healthy, but when you're playing a sport as competitive as ice hockey, especially on the grandest stage of them all, like WrestleMania or the Four Nations Face-Off Tournament, then you're probably going to get some guys putting in the effort required that will get them hurt. So that, of course, is going to be improved upon next time there is a Four Nations tournament. But expanding upon some of these other GM meeting notes, Friedman did say that he thinks it's possible the 25-26 season will start earlier. However, the NHL does not want to compete with baseball, so there's that to consider, but then you also have the Olympics next season, so September might actually be the starting time, roughly, for the upcoming 25-26 season. One GM told Friedman that they want to see the Four Nations take place at the beginning of the season, which sounds so crazy to me. Like, imagine having the Four Nations at the beginning of the year, and everybody is amped up. Of course, it's going to be super exciting, super promotional, but somebody gets hurt in the Four Nations tournament because, they haven't played hockey all summer. This is their first taste of game action in an entire season. Like, you thought these guys were going out there trying their butts off, fighting and getting into rough stuff in February? I think it'd be even crazier if they did the tournament in September. Maybe as a, let's get back into the swing of things type of thing, maybe it wouldn't be as bad, but some guys are going to be shot out of a cannon at the beginning of the season and end up hurting themselves in the process. Obviously, you don't want to see injuries go down, but with the animosity and the energy that the Four Nations had, it's kind of impossible to ignore it, right? It's definitely going to be an aspect that we expect out of this tourney. So bringing it back over into September, that's certainly going to be interesting. You can let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, what your thoughts are on that. There also were some conversations about overtime. It wasn't really discussed amongst the GMs. At some point in time, there might be a discussion with the players about making overtime longer. There still are 2 more days of meetings, though, so it's not really a formal agenda item. 77% of games in the NHL also end before the shootout, so whether or not you think overtime needs to be longer, that is up to you. Friedman then talks a little bit about the St. Louis Blues and how they're going to play the Predators and the Blackhawks to end off the season. They have a good chance of grabbing that second wildcard spot, so if the Vancouver Canucks falter like they have been in the past few weeks here, and if they continue losing like they lost yesterday, watch out. It might not be Calgary, actually, that takes that final spot. It could be St. Louis. Who really knows? This is where Elliotte Friedman goes out there and talks about the Vancouver Canucks, though. He says that the playoffs have started for them, which is true. I'm not going to go out there and dispute that. Sure, the playoffs and playoff games, they play more intense hockey. There are different game dynamics between regular season and playoff hockey, but in terms of the stakes, in terms of what these games mean, every game at this point out can be treated like a Game 6 or a Game 7 for the Vancouver Canucks. They just cannot afford to lose more points. Hughes is trying to drag the team into the fight with him, and he is playing like an MVP, and the rest of the team needs to come with Hughes. Yeah, absolutely. Elliotte Friedman, you're right there, baby. Hughes, as we had mentioned, he's entering his villain arc a la Omni-Man in yesterday's post-game Utah video. From Hughes shoving the cameras away to him banging his stick on the ice, demanding a pass from Victor Mancini only for it to not come, Quinn Hughes is starting to show those signs. He wants this team to will itself into the postseason in the ways that he knows he can will the team. Everybody just needs to follow along with him, so Friedman is correct there. Friedman then talks about Rick Tocchet, and this is a really interesting thing to bring up because Tocchet has been under siege on social media everywhere for the way he has been coaching this team, especially in yesterday's game against Utah, with all the power play opportunities and the non-threats that Vancouver was able to throw Utah's way, with Brock Besser not being able to get going, nobody's cutting inside, nobody's getting any significant goal support. Rick Tocchet is being labeled in ways that I would be demonetized on YouTube if I were to repeat them here in this video. But Elliotte Friedman goes out there and says this. On Rick Tocchet, he does not think that Tocchet will allow his contract status to be a story. Tocchet is demanding a lot out of himself, the coaching staff, and the players, and he won't allow the players to think the story is anything but the playoff chase. Whatever happens, they'll deal with his contract after the season. So, with Rick being in a vulnerable spot here with his job potentially being on the line and the team not playing all too great in consecutive games here, this is the most desperate time for Rick Tocchet's coaching to work and to show that it can be as effective as it was last year. You gotta remember, around last year, this time last year, it's when the Canucks stopped scoring a whole bunch of goals. They were pretty weak heading into the 2024 playoffs, and then they barely edged by Nashville, a very low-scoring, low-danger series. And then against Edmonton, even in Game 7, it was a 3-2 game. Filip Hronek made things interesting at the end, but the Canucks were not able to get by the inevitable Stanley Cup runner-ups. Rick Tocchet needs to get this team back into order, and they need to start creating offense. It was easy against Chicago. Chicago stinks, but not against Utah, and not against the Winnipeg Jets later on into the week. Friedman then talked about Miller and Hughes. This is what he said on the broadcast today. He thinks everyone understood that it was time for JT Miller to be moved. Hughes felt that once the organization and Miller decided to separate, he was going to back that decision. Hughes was also determined to help Pettersson get his game back, and he saw the way this was going to go and decided to make this work. So, if Quinn is given his seal of approval, he thinks that everything is good to go and that the right decisions have been made. He's backing them all up. He's putting himself into the dogfight as well. Oh, captain, my captain. That's my captain, baby. Quinn Hughes. What an absolute gem of a hockey player and a human being this guy is in Vancouver Canucks colors. But we had already made a few videos about that as well. Quinn Hughes was on Petey's side, for lack of a better term, to describe the way everything went down. And once Miller was on his way out, the whole team kind of shifted afterwards. So that is, of course, a dynamic that we're not surprised to see. And then Friedman went out there and spoke about the Canucks for Kids Fund as well. His fee for going on Donnie and Dolly was donated to the Canucks for Kids Fund. He won't be at the telethon this season because he's at the GM meetings. It's tomorrow night, after all. And he's always been impressed with the generosity of Canucks fans. So with that in mind, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about all these Elliotte Friedman comments on the Vancouver Canucks. From the other stuff as well, do you want to talk about the Four Nations and the early season start time for 25-26? What are your thoughts on Quinn Hughes and JT Miller, Elliotte Friedman's comments on that, as well as Rick Tocchet and his contract situation too? Let me know in the comments all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9 and bye.